Welcome to another edition of Down and Out with our very own Dr. David Chow, brought to you by Bet Parks, as we bring you the latest injury news and updates from around the NFL. And Doc, let's get right to it. An interesting one in Tampa last night between the Bucs and the Ravens. Of course, Thursday night, you have to expect some injuries, and this game didn't disappoint. Let's start with the Ravens tight end Mark Andrews. When he left the game early, that's Lamar Jackson's go-to guy. I was concerned not only about the injury, but about their ability to kind of sustain a lead. What did you see with the injury to Andrew's shoulder last night?
Yeah, obviously he came in with a knee issue where he didn't have any catches the Sunday before, 4 days earlier. Landed on his right shoulder. That looked like an AC joint sprain to me, but the body language didn't look real good. I mean, there was no running into the locker room and get going. And obviously he did not come back into the game. So hopefully it's not worse than that. Hopefully there's no associated fracture involved. But it looked like an AC joint sprain right there. And of course, the other big injury from that game, Shaq Barrett with his Achilles. But Rich, let me ask you, what do you think about the body language on the sideline? Tom giving the backup center grief. That's okay. I mean, that happens, right? Heat of the moment. But what about Ryan Jensen just getting up and walking away? What do you think about that?
Yeah, not good. You know, I think there's a lot of frustration boiling over down there in Tampa, especially with a 45-year-old quarterback, Doc, that's used to doing things a certain way. I mean, he's used to a standard of excellence. He's used to execution and precision, and simply not there. I think the frustration with some of the offensive line, some of the protection calls. I think there's some real frustration. You watch him with Mike Evans not finishing routes, those two not being on the same page, all the turnover that they've had at that wide receiver position. And I just think, when you lose, a lot of bad things happen, you know what I mean? And you really find out a lot about the character of a football team. And I think right now, Tom Brady, who's not used to losing, is really having a very difficult time controlling his emotions. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at one other injury in that game. Gus Edwards, who's been battling knee injuries, had that ACL repair, Doc. He looked like he hyperextended the knee, and now they're saying it might have been a hamstring injury. What did you see on the Gus Edwards injury in the second half?
Well, he did hyperextend his knee a little bit and did grab at his hamstring. And when you do hyperextend your knee, your hip is flexed, you can stretch the hamstring. Look, the Ravens have been snake bit at that position, right? J.K. Dobbins made a great return for multi-ligament, but didn't do that well. Now out again. They just get Gus Edwards just in time again. Look, it's probably back to Kenyon Drake at this point in time. This is what happens. Injuries beget injuries, and as great as a recovery as Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins have made, there are injuries lead to additional injuries. Chris Godwin on Tampa is doing very well right now, but when he first came back / rush back, he had a hamstring injury in that week 1 that set him back a little bit. He seems to be over it now, but everyone goes through it in terms of acclimation in the first few weeks back from a major injury.
You look at what's going on in Cincinnati. They had it rolling. They've got 3 receivers on pace for 1,000 yards, including their superstar second-year pro, Jamar Chase. Now we hear he has a hip injury, and he's getting a second opinion. What's your take on Jamar Chase and the hip injury in Cincinnati?
That one's really interesting, and it happened against the Saints in week 6 in the third quarter on a touchdown catch. He jammed his hip, posterior hip subluxation type injury, a lesser form of a Ryan Fitzpatrick recently or a Bo Jackson back in the day, lesser form. He came back in that game in the fourth quarter and caught another touchdown. He played week 7 and played pretty well, played great in the first half. And then, in the second half, developed a few little issues. My guess is he's got a bone bruise in that hip from that hip subluxation, and a shutdown is coming of 4 to 6 weeks. Why? A, to let it calm down. B, you don't want to turn this into a long-term issue. He's a young superstar. And in some ways, this is similar to Ezekiel Elliott with a bone bruise in his knee on his PCL knee, where he returned to play. 2 plays later, hurled the same guy who hit his knee, but now is likely to miss some time, miss this week, the bye week, and maybe a little more to let that bone bruise rest to not turn it into a bigger issue. That's what I think we're going to hear from the second opinions from Jamar.
All right, let's finish off with one more knee injury. This one out in Seattle with DK Metcalf. another one that's getting a second opinion. What did you see with that injury? And I anticipate, obviously, he will not play this week. What's the chances of seeing DK Metcalf in a week or so?
Well, depends on how much swelling there is. I think his kneecap shifted. There's a slight patella subluxation issue on that deep throw to the corner, to the pylon there, and it's how much swelling there is. Look, I know he's tough and he's lobbying to play, but I think he's going to miss a little bit of time. And to do comparables, this is a lesser form of the kneecap subluxation dislocation injury that Patrick Mahomes had 3 or 4 years ago, and he missed a few weeks. This is a lesser form of it. One question I got for you, Rich, before we go. Russell Wilson, we talked about how there can't be no such thing as a 1-week hamstring strain. He missed last week. He's going to play this week. What do you think about high knees in the aisles of the airplane?
Well, it sounds like, he's talking to the medical staff and sometimes players, Doc, can't get out of their own way, and I think he's talked about Wolverine blood, and he talks about, high knees on the plane and doing a 4-hour workout while his teammates are sleeping. I mean, I don't think that was his intention, but, I think some players may find it offensive. I think that it's probably time to sit down Russell Wilson and say, hey, less is more. Let's be careful what we say to the media. We've got other players. We got Justin Tucker flying home from the win last night for the Baltimore Ravens. He's sitting on the plane and he's making fun of Russell Wilson. So Russell Wilson really needs to focus on his play and his performance on the field. And I think that's really where it has to start in Denver. They're, as you know, Doc, they're really struggling. This is an important week. Even some speculation that if they don't win this weekend in London, that there may be a coaching change already with the Denver Broncos and Nathaniel Hackett. It's kind of a critical must-win situation for the Broncos.
No question. And look, it's a big old 747 that you fly over on, so it's way bigger than normal. There's plenty of room. Like the one time that the Chargers went, we played the Saints. We set up a sort of mini training room on the plane, so to speak. But, ice and stim and some things. And we weren't doing exercise up and down the aisle. I won't say his name. I had a friend over last night watching Thursday Night Football, a former NFL offensive lineman. And I asked him about this, and he just rolled his eyes. And he said, what would happen if you woke up and saw Russell doing that? I said, I would have told him to sit down.
It's amazing. It's amazing what comes out of the mouths of some of these players, Doc. But there you have it, another edition of Down and Out with our very own Dr. David Chow, brought to you by Bet Parks. Enjoy the games this weekend, and good luck.